They kicked her off the plane for looking suspicious. Then she called the CEO, a routine afternoon at John F. Kennedy International Airport spirals into a mind-boggling spectacle when an unassuming black woman named Ava Thompson is unceremoniously removed from her flight. Her only offense? Carrying herself with quiet confidence and looking suspicious to the airline staff. Flustered, outraged, and stranded in one of the busiest airports in the world, Ava makes a bold move that no one sees coming. She calls the CEO of the very airline that ousted her. The explosive chain reaction that follows exposes hidden prejudices, rocks corporate boardrooms, and teaches everyone involved that prejudice is a debt that always comes due. It was 5:30 a.m. AT, John F. Kennedy International Airport, and the sprawling terminals were already teeming with travelers. Red-eye flights were departing for distant continents, while early bird passengers prepared to hop across the country for business or family reunions. Amid this swirl of humanity, 32-year-old Ava Thompson hurried toward Gate 23, balancing a neatly packed carry-on and a half-finished latte from a nearby cafe. Ava wore a pair of comfortable black slacks and a navy blue sweater, nothing that screamed suspicious. Yet, behind her calm eyes, she harbored an electric sense of anticipation. She was heading to Los Angeles for a groundbreaking job interview, a role that could catapult her career in PR management. After years of climbing the corporate ladder in smaller firms, she felt ready to make her mark on a bigger stage. Her phone buzzed. Glancing down, she noted a text from her mother. "Good luck, baby. Trust your instincts." A small smile tugged at her lips. Her mother had always been her biggest cheerleader, especially since AVA's father passed away a few years ago. She tucked the phone into her coat pocket, promising herself she'd call after landing in La. Ava approached the gate agent, a young man in an airline uniform. A digital sign overhead read Tripway Airlines Flight 2211 to Los Angeles. She handed him her boarding pass, expecting a routine scan. Instead, he scrutinized her ID for an extra second, frowned slightly, and then forced a practiced smile. "Everything okay?" Ava asked politely. "Yes, ma'am," he said, returning the boarding pass. "We'll begin boarding in about 10 minutes. Something in his expression made her uneasy, but she brushed it off. Airports could be stressful for employees, too. She found a seat near the window, sipping her latte, trying to review her talking points for the job interview. She told herself she had nothing to worry about. She was just another passenger, after all. Little did Ava know that this small, lingering discomfort was merely the first ripple in a storm that would soon batter her entire day. Someone was already making silent judgments about her, from the cut of her hair to the quiet confidence in her stride. And those judgments would soon ignite a chain of events more dramatic than any job interview scenario she'd ever imagined. Somewhere behind the gate desk, a supervisor was whispering to a security officer, pointing discreetly in Ava's direction. Whispers turned into cautious steps, as though she were under surveillance for some unspoken threat. Oblivious for now, Ava mentally rehearsed her pitch for the upcoming interview, excited to showcase her talents in the City of Angels. Fate, however, had other plans. The next several hours would test every ounce of Ava's composure, her will to stand up for herself, and her belief that justice, when demanded, can set the wheels of change in motion, even at 30,000 feet. Right on schedule, the gate agent announced the start of boarding. As usual, passengers with first-class tickets, elite status, or special needs were invited first. Ava was in boarding group 2, no fancy membership, but at least she'd have enough overhead bin space if she got on fairly early. She queued up behind a few other travelers, mentally running through the events that would await her in Los Angeles, picking up a rental car, checking into her hotel, reviewing the final draft of her PR campaign portfolio. She felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. As she stepped forward to have her boarding pass scanned, the same young gate agent gave her a cursory smile but paused before letting her pass. With a glance over his shoulder, he subtly beckoned someone to his side. A second agent, slightly older, approached, whispering, "Everything fine here?" Ava tried not to read too much into it, but her heart skipped a beat. The older agent studied Ava's face, then nodded, signaling the younger agent to proceed. Ava offered a polite smile, feeling the tension in the air. At last, the beep of the scanner allowed her through, and she moved down the jet bridge, determined to put the strange moment behind her. Inside the aircraft, a Boeing 737 with the Tripway Airlines logo on the headrests, Ava found her aisle seat in row 14. She exhaled, relieved that at least the seat was decent, with enough legroom for her modest 5'5" frame. Tucking her carry-on overhead, she settled in. Moments later, a flight attendant approached her row, scanning the seat numbers and passenger faces. She paused, her gaze landing on Ava with a flicker of hesitation. Ava's pulse quickened. "What is going on?" The attendant opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it, giving Ava a tight smile before heading toward the front galley. Other passengers filed in parents, juggling kids, business travelers clutching laptops, a smattering of college students wearing hoodies from various universities. The usual pre-flight hubbub engulfed the cabin, yet Ava couldn't shake the sense that eyes kept darting toward her. She scrolled through her phone, trying to project calm. Minutes later, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard and promising an on-time departure. Ava let out a small sigh of relief. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe the staff had simply recognized her as a passenger who'd traveled with Tripway before, or there was some glitch with her ID. She tried to relax, pulling out a well-worn novel to distract herself. In the forward galley, however, hushed conversations continued. The flight attendant who'd paused at AVA's row was now speaking quietly into a phone. No one outside the flight crew heard the exact words, but the undertone was clear. "Yes, row 14 seat C, she's... Well, let's just say she seems suspicious." The wheels of an ominous plan were turning, even before the cabin door had closed. And Ava had no clue just how drastically her day was about to change. Pre-flight checks were nearly complete. Ava heard the overhead bins closing and a flight attendant's voice calling for any last carry-ons to be stowed. She bookmarked her page and stashed her novel in the seat back pocket, bracing for the usual announcements about seat belts and emergency exits. Then came something unusual. The captain's voice returned to the intercom, but his tone was tense, lacking the warm, generic pleasantries. "One might expect, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Before we begin our taxi, we need to address a brief security matter. We ask for your patience while we sort this out. Please remain seated." A ripple of confusion spread throughout the cabin. Passengers exchanged puzzled looks, and a few anxious whispers rose from the rows. Ava's stomach churned with dread. She had a sinking feeling that this was about her, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Within seconds, 2 uniformed airport security officers stepped onto the plane, guided by the lead flight attendant. They navigated the narrow aisle, scanning seat numbers. One pointed in Ava's direction. She felt her heart pound like a drum. "AAM, could you please gather your belongings and step off the aircraft with us?" one officer asked, his voice carefully controlled but undeniably firm. Ava's mouth went dry. "What's going on?" she managed. "We just need to ask you a few questions," the other officer said. "If you'll come with us, please." She glanced around. Her fellow passengers stared with expressions ranging from sympathy to curiosity. No one seemed to understand why this was happening. Embarrassment and fear wrestled inside her. Slowly, she grabbed her carry-on from the overhead bin, trembling as she unclipped her seatbelt. As Ava rose, a hush fell over that section of the cabin. A mother in row 13 whispered to her child to keep quiet. A businessman in row 15 tapped furiously at his phone, possibly live tweeting the strange spectacle. Trying to maintain composure, Ava followed the officers. The walk down the aisle felt like a perp walk, with all eyes on her. Her mind churned. Was there a mismatch on her ticket? Had her ID been flagged mistakenly? She'd never been in legal trouble. Why would anyone consider her a security threat? She emerged from the jet bridge back into the gate area, the security officers guiding her toward a private waiting room. The overhead departure boards flickered with time updates, ironically reminding her how precious her flight schedule was. She fought the urge to cry, focusing on controlling her breathing. In the small waiting room, the door closed behind them. One of the officers cleared his throat. "We've received a report that you may be carrying dangerous items or have intentions that, well, that raise concern. We need to check your bag and confirm your identity." Ava's voice shook. "That's impossible. I have no dangerous items. Who accused me of this?" The officers exchanged a glance. "We're just doing our jobs, ma'am," one replied, his tone matter-of-fact. In that moment, Ava felt not just confusion, but a burning sense of injustice. She wasn't merely being inconvenienced, she was being profiled, singled out for no valid reason. And something told her this was just the start of a battle she had never expected to fight. As the security officers methodically went through her carry-on, Ava sat stiff-backed in the small waiting area, her pulse thudding in her ears. They carefully inspected every item: her laptop, a makeup pouch, a folded jacket, and the novel she'd been reading. Her wallet and ID were verified and then double-checked against the flight manifest. "Ma'am, do you mind if we pat you down?" one officer asked, pulling on a fresh pair of gloves. Ava stiffened. "If I refuse, does that mean you won't let me back on the flight?" The officer hesitated. "We can't clear you without following procedure." She swallowed her pride, standing with arms outstretched as they performed a quick, professional pat down. Nothing out of the ordinary. They found no contraband, no hidden compartments, just a regular passenger's luggage and a bewildered traveler. When they finished, the senior officer exhaled, shutting AVA's carry-on. "All clear. There's no reason to prevent you from traveling, as far as we can see." A flicker of relief passed over Ava, but it was overshadowed by anger. "If I can reboard, I'd like to do so now. My flight must be leaving soon." The officers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Finally, one said, "The airline staff has the final say." They reported the concern. "If they're not comfortable with you reboarding, we can't force them to let you on." Ava's stomach dropped. "So, I can be branded a security threat by someone with zero evidence, and you can't do anything about it?" They shrugged, as if to say that's the system. One officer stepped out to speak with the gate agent. Ava remained alone in the cold, fluorescent-lit room, her mind reeling. Was she about to miss her flight over a baseless accusation? A few minutes later, the officer returned, his expression solemn. "We're sorry, ma'am. Tripway Airlines management decided you will not be allowed on this flight. They suggest you speak with customer service to rebook." The frustration, fear, and humiliation boiled over inside Ava. "Who made that call?" she demanded. "I did nothing wrong. There's no reason to keep me off that plane." He lifted his hands in a gesture of futility. "I only know the flight crew cited you as suspicious. The airline's final word is that you can't board. That was the last straw." Ava snatched up her belongings, feeling tears sting her eyes. She refused to cry here, in front of these strangers. What about my job interview? The hours of preparation? Fuming, she marched out into the terminal. She headed straight for the Tripway Airlines customer service desk, determined to get answers. But even in her anger, a plan began to form. She'd worked in corporate PR long enough to know that sometimes you have to go straight to the top. And so, as she stepped up to the queue, she pulled out her phone. I'm calling corporate, she thought. Better yet, I'm calling the CEO. The name Ed Bastian might be associated with Delta, but she knew the top brass at Tripway was a man named Thomas Caldwell. She had no illusions that it would be easy to reach him, but she had a feeling that once she did, fireworks would follow. Ava marched toward the Tripway Airlines customer service desk, her carry-on rolling behind her with an indignant clatter. The area was crowded with passengers seeking rebookings, refunds, and last-minute seat changes. A harried customer service representative, wearing a tight-lipped smile, waved Ava forward. Name, please? The rep asked without making eye contact, fingers poised over the keyboard. Ava Thompson. I was kicked off flight 2211 for absolutely no reason, Ava said, voice tense. I need to speak to someone in charge. Immediately, the rep typed her name into the system, frowning at the flag notation that popped up. Ma'am, it says here you were removed due to a security concern. Ava took a steadying breath. There was no security concern. Your own officers found nothing. Yet your airline decided I'm not allowed on that flight. The rep gave her an apologetic shrug. We can place you on a later flight, but there may be a fee to change the ticket unless you can produce documentation. Excuse me. A fee? After you remove me unfairly? Ava's voice sharpened. She leaned in, lowering her tone so as not to disturb the other passengers. I need the name and contact information of someone who can resolve this now. A manager, a supervisor, someone with actual authority. The rep looked uneasy. Well, let me see if a supervisor is available. One moment, please. She reached for a phone, murmuring into it, presumably requesting a manager. Ava tapped her foot impatiently, her mind racing. She thought about her interview in Los Angeles. Time was slipping away, and rebooking onto a later flight would likely make her miss it. Could she call the hiring manager and explain? What would I even say? Within a few minutes, the supervisor, an older woman named Monica, stepped out, her expression guarded. How can I help you, Miss Thompson? Ava recounted the ordeal, from the suspicious stares at the gate to being escorted off the plane. Monica listened, hands folded, offering the occasional nod. But when Ava demanded reinstatement on another flight at no extra charge, Monica hesitated. I need to confirm the flight crew's notes, Monica said carefully. If they indicated a security concern, it might be outside my power to override their decision. The best I can do is put you on a flight tomorrow morning at a reduced fee. Ava's temper flared. Tomorrow morning? That doesn't help me. I have a critical job interview in Los Angeles today, and I was denied boarding for no valid reason. You messed up. Monica pursed her lips. Let me check if there's a seat on tonight's last flight to Laos, but I can't promise to waive all fees. Ava felt her heart sink. This was a bureaucratic wall. She was running out of options, and each minute brought her closer to losing the opportunity she'd worked so hard for. Stepping aside, Ava opened her phone and Googled the name Thomas Caldwell, Tripway, CEO. She located the corporate headquarters phone number and swiftly dialed. Tripway Airlines Corporate, how may I direct your call? A receptionist's voice chimed. Ava inhaled sharply, bracing herself. Yes, I'd like to speak to Mr. Caldwell's office. It's urgent. She had no idea if her call would even get through, but in that moment she was willing to climb the entire corporate ladder if it meant justice for what had just happened. Thomas Caldwell's office, Lisa speaking, came a crisp, professional voice on the other end. Ava nearly lost her composure out of sheer surprise. She hadn't expected to get beyond a receptionist. She cleared her throat, forcing her voice to remain steady. Hello, Lisa. My name is Ava Thompson. I'm calling from JFK Airport. I was just removed from a Tripway flight without cause, and was told I looked suspicious. This is a serious issue of discrimination. I need to speak with Mr. Caldwell or someone in his immediate team." Lisa paused. Ava heard the faint click of a computer keyboard in the background. "Miss Thompson, can you please give me a moment to look into your incident?" Ava exhaled, relief mingled with anticipation. The hum of airport noise filled her ears as she weighted rolling suitcases, overhead announcements for other flights, and a crying toddler somewhere nearby. When Lisa's voice returned, it was subtly more sympathetic. "Miss Thompson, I've found a note from the flight crew referencing a security risk passenger at JFK, but no specific details. This is extremely unusual. Please hold while I connect you to Mr. Caldwell's executive assistant." Ava felt her pulse quicken. Executive assistant? That was better than a dead end. Within seconds, a new voice, deeper and more confident, greeted her. "Hello, Miss Thompson. This is James Walters, executive assistant to Thomas Caldwell. I understand you have a serious concern about your flight removal." Ava recounted the entire story. Again, her tone measured but urgent. She described how she was singled out with no evidence, forced through an embarrassing search, and ultimately barred from boarding the plane. "I'm not looking for an apology alone," she concluded. "I want accountability. I want to board a plane to LA today without additional fees, and I want to know how your airline plans to prevent this from happening to another innocent passenger." James Walters sounded genuinely concerned. "Miss Thompson, I'm sorry for what you've experienced. Let me speak with Mr. Caldwell immediately and see what can be done. We will address this. Could I have your phone number to call you back?" Heart pounding, Ava provided her number. "Please understand, I have a critical job interview in a few hours. If I miss it, the consequences are severe for my career. I'm not sure how far away from your offices you are, but..." Walters cut in with an air of reassurance. "We're based in Manhattan, so not too far. Let me see if we can expedite a resolution, Miss Thompson." Ava thanked him and ended the call. She gripped her phone tightly, a swirl of hope and lingering anger in her chest. The manager, named Monica, was still tapping away on a keyboard behind the counter, occasionally glancing at Ava with a guarded expression. For a moment, Ava contemplated approaching Monica again, but something told her to wait. If the executive assistant to the CEO was on the case, that might trump any local manager's blockade. She found a nearby seat, placed her carry-on beside her, and tried to steady her thoughts. All she could do now was wait and trust that reaching so high up the corporate chain would yield results. Little did she know how big those results would be and how quickly. While Ava waited anxiously in the terminal, a very different scene played out at Tripway Airlines corporate headquarters in Lower Manhattan. James Walters strode into Thomas Caldwell's office, a glass-walled corner suite overlooking the city's skyline. Caldwell, a trim man in his 50s, looked up from a stack of briefing documents about the airline's latest route expansions. "James, this better be important," Caldwell said, checking his watch. "I'm due for a board meeting in 10 minutes. Walters laid out the situation swiftly. A passenger, Miss Ava Thompson, forcibly removed from a flight at JFK for looking suspicious. No contraband found. No criminal background. Just a potential civil rights fiasco unfolding in real time." Caldwell's brow furrowed. A security risk. Did she threaten anyone? Show a weapon? Walters shook his head. "No, sir. She was singled out with no factual basis. Airport security found nothing, but the flight crew still refused to let her board." Caldwell exhaled sharply. "Are you telling me my airline staff profiled a passenger? This is exactly the sort of PR nightmare we can't afford." Walters nodded. "Indeed, sir. I believe we should act fast. Miss Thompson is calling it an act of discrimination. She threatened to escalate, She also mentioned she's missing a crucial job interview because of this. Caldwell stared at the Manhattan skyline, weighing his options. The airline industry was cutthroat enough without accusations of racial profiling or baseless security claims. They had competition from Delta, American, and United, all vying for passengers' trust. A scandal of this nature, especially if it went viral on social media, could tarnish the brand significantly. He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Shelley, cancel the first half of that board meeting. I'll join later. This is more urgent." Turning back to Walters, Caldwell said, "Arrange a call with the JFK station manager, the flight crew involved, and Miss Thompson, if possible. Get them all on a conference line. I want details. Then we'll see if we can get Miss Thompson on a flight today." "Yes, sir," Walters replied. "Should I also contact our legal department?" Caldwell nodded gravely. "Absolutely. We need to determine if we have a liability issue here. If Miss Thompson decides to sue for damages, I want us prepared." Within moments, Walters was on the phone, orchestrating a scramble among airline personnel. Emails flagged urgent pinged across the corporate network. The station manager at JFK, the head of Tripway's security division, and the flight crew's lead attendant each received frantic calls demanding immediate explanations. As the wheels of corporate bureaucracy churned, Caldwell tapped a pen against his desk, feeling a mix of frustration and dread. "Why do we keep facing these PR nightmares?" he wondered. "And how can we fix this quickly without it blowing up in our faces?" Back at JFK, Ava remained unaware of the frantic phone calls happening in her defense. She only knew that the fate of her travel, and possibly her career, rested on a corporate machine known for moving at a glacial pace. But this time, the machinery was moving faster than normal, driven by a CEO who despised scandal almost as much as he feared a lawsuit. Ava paced by a row of plastic chairs near the Tripway customer service desk, glancing at the digital clock on her phone. She had roughly 2 hours before her interview in Los Angeles, a physically impossible timeline if she were to still catch any flight from JFK and get to the West Coast. Her mind buzzed with contingency plans. Could she do a Zoom call instead? Would the prospective employer allow that at the last minute? Suddenly her phone vibrated. An unknown number displayed on the screen. She answered, heart pounding. "Miss Thompson, this is Thomas Caldwell, CEO of Tripway Airlines," a crisp, baritone voice said. "I'm told you've had a serious issue at JFK. Ava pressed her phone tighter to her ear, stepping away from the crowd for some privacy. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell. Thank you for calling. I've been treated unfairly by your staff. I was removed from my flight for no valid reason, and now I'm missing a critical job interview in La." Caldwell sighed. "I'm deeply sorry for what happened. We're investigating. I assure you this is not how Tripway conducts business. I want to make this right. Would you be willing to talk with our station manager and the flight crew on a conference call? We'd like to hear your account alongside theirs." Ava's heartbeat thrummed with a mix of anger and relief. "At least they're taking me seriously. Yes, I'm willing, but I also need to figure out how to salvage my interview." Caldwell's voice softened. "I understand. Let me do everything I can to expedite a resolution. If needed, we'll arrange a special accommodation to get you to La, even if it means rerouting you from another airport or using a partner airline. Let's just get the facts straight first." Ava agreed. Moments later, James Walters called back, patching her into a multi-line conference. On the call were Caldwell, Walters, the JFK station manager, a man named Craig Thomason, and the lead flight attendant from that morning. Ava put her phone on speaker, holding it close. Thomason spoke first, haltingly. "Miss Thompson, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Our staff reported you as a potential security risk, but it seems that was an error." Ava cut him off, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "An error. I was humiliated in front of a plane full of people, forced into a search, and had my day derailed over an error. Who made this so-called error? Silence. Then the flight attendant cleared her throat. It was me, Miss Thompson. I'm sorry. I thought I saw you. Well, you seemed nervous, and you kept looking around. I might have overreacted. Ava clenched her jaw. I was anxious about my job interview, not planning any wrongdoing. Caldwell intervened. Miss Thompson, we acknowledge this was improper. We want to make amends. Let's discuss how to get you on the next possible flight, free of charge, and ensure you have everything you need. Despite her anger, Ava sensed a small victory. The CEO himself was apologizing and offering tangible assistance. But would that be enough to offset the harm done and the opportunity she'd just lost? Even with Thomas Caldwell's direct intervention, there was no escaping reality. The next flight to Los Angeles would not depart in time for Ava to make her in-person interview. She checked her watch repeatedly, her pulse thumping in her ears. An apologetic Craig Thomason tried calling other airlines and looked at private charter options, but every route would have her landing at best 2 hours past her scheduled interview. Ava's frustration spilled out onto the conference line. I appreciate the effort, but you realize how big this interview was for me. They specifically asked for an in-person presentation. This was my shot, and now it's gone. Caldwell's measured voice responded, "What if you request to move the interview to tomorrow morning or conduct a video conference? Tripway can cover any costs you might need, such as a hotel in La or an upgraded flight." Ava felt tears prick her eyes. "I'll try," she said softly, "but it might be too late. They have a schedule. It's a multi-phase hiring process, and I've already had a minor postponement once." She ended the call with the airline team, promising to keep them updated on whether her interview could be rescheduled. Then she promptly dialed the hiring manager's number. An assistant answered, politely stating that the manager was in a meeting. Ava left a detailed voicemail, explaining her predicament and apologizing profusely. Sinking into a plastic seat, she stared at her phone. Time ticked by with punishing indifference. Her mind replayed the humiliating scene on the plane, the suspicious looks, the hush of stares as security escorted her out. She felt a storm of injustice build within her. She had done everything right, yet here she was, possibly missing out on a life-changing opportunity. Eventually, her phone buzzed with a text from the hiring manager's assistant. "We're sorry, but the schedule is locked. No rescheduling possible this week. If the position remains open, we'll contact you." Ava's shoulders sagged. That sounded like a polite dismissal. She typed back a grateful reply, though her heart was far from thankful. Sliding her phone back into her bag, she realized she was no longer racing to catch a flight. The entire sense of urgency had dissolved, replaced by a hollow despair. She scanned the terminal, noticing that the morning rush had subsided. The flight that should have taken her to her dream job was undoubtedly halfway across the country by now. All because someone looked at me and decided I was suspicious. Gathering her composure, Ava decided to return to the Tripway customer service area. If nothing else, she deserved accountability and perhaps more than a mere apology. With her interview lost, what was left to salvage? She wasn't entirely sure, but she knew she couldn't let this pass without a fight. Little did she know that a media storm was about to brew, forcing Tripway Airlines into a spotlight they never wanted. Because sometimes the personal battles we wage become the rallying cries for a much bigger cause. As Ava sat contemplating her next move, a stranger approached her, an older woman with kind eyes and a reassuring smile. "I saw what happened to you this morning," the woman said softly. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I managed to record part of it on my phone, if it helps." Ava's eyes widened. You filmed me being kicked off the plane?" The woman nodded. I started recording when the security officers arrived. I just felt it was wrong. You didn't appear to be doing anything suspicious." The woman, who introduced herself as Michelle Park, played back the video. It showed her visibly confused. Ava following the officers, her carry-on in tow, while the flight attendants looked on. In the background, a couple of passengers could be heard saying, "She didn't do anything, and this is messed up." Ava's stomach churned with a mix of gratitude and renewed frustration. "Michelle, would you mind sending me that clip?" Of course. The woman airdropped the footage to Ava's phone. They exchanged contact information, with Michelle offering to confirm details if Ava needed a witness. Almost on autopilot, Ava opened her social media apps. She was not a huge influencer. By any means, she had a modest following of around 2,000 on Twitter, largely colleagues, friends, and a few professional contacts. But something in her demanded to speak out. Taking a shaky breath, Ava posted the video alongside a brief description. "This morning, I was kicked off at Tripway Airlines flight at JFK for looking suspicious. No evidence, no explanation. Lost my dream job interview in La. I'm sharing because this cannot keep happening." Within minutes, the post began to garner likes and retweets, first from her close friends, then from their networks. Comments flooded in, expressing outrage, disbelief, or sadly, a resigned sense of familiarity with such incidents of profiling. A few users tagged civil rights organizations, urging them to step in. Ava retreated to a quiet corner of the terminal, her phone buzzing incessantly. She felt the swirl of digital energy coalescing around her story. It was both empowering and frightening. Public scrutiny could put enormous pressure on Tripway, but it could also turn on Ava, especially if trolls or detractors latched onto the story. By the time an hour had passed, a journalist from a local news outlet inquired via direct message if she'd be willing to do an on-camera interview. Another user claimed to be from a major national newspaper, seeking her contact info. Twitter notifications soared into the hundreds. Across the terminal, a harried Tripway staffer recognized Ava from afar, seeing her phone blow up with constant alerts. They whispered into a walkie-talkie, "We might have a real PR meltdown brewing here. She's going viral." And so, the spark had been lit. A single video clip and Ava's heartfelt testimony formed the match. Soon, the bright flames of public outrage would force Tripway and its entire corporate structure into rapid damage control. Back in Manhattan, Thomas Caldwell's phone buzzed ceaselessly. His PR director, Karen Lee, practically burst into his office. "Thomas, we have a situation," she announced, breathing hard. "That passenger, Ava Thompson, her story is blowing up on Twitter. Local news has picked it up already." Caldwell rubbed his temples. "I was worried about that. Has Miss Thompson accepted any offers for interviews?" Karen shook her head, scanning her phone. "Not sure, but multiple outlets are referencing her tweets. The video is going viral. Passengers can be heard saying she did nothing wrong. It looks bad for us." Caldwell stared out the window, a knot tightening in his stomach. "All right, we need a formal statement now. Get legal on board, but we can't hide behind an ongoing investigation line." "This is a direct black eye on our brand," Karen nodded. "We'll need to phrase it carefully. We can't say it was a misunderstanding if the staff truly singled her out. That would blow up in our faces." Caldwell leaned over his desk. "Let's start with something like, 'We take these matters very seriously, regret any distress caused, and are conducting a thorough review. Then commit to re-evaluating our training procedures for flight crews regarding suspicion-based removals." Karen scribbled notes, her expression tense. "We should also consider if we're going to offer Miss Thompson compensation. She missed her job interview." "Do it," Caldwell said decisively. "Full compensation, flight credits, hotel if she needs one, maybe even a direct financial settlement. Because if this escalates into a lawsuit, we're looking at a much bigger payout, plus the PR nightmare. Karen's phone beeped. She read the message, eyes widening. Now Reuters wants a statement. They're referencing the possibility of racial bias. If that angle catches fire, we're in for a major backlash. Draft the statement, Caldwell repeated, voice taut. I'll sign off. And get me a direct line to Miss Thompson again. Minutes later, an official tweet from @Tripway Airlines read, Tripway acknowledges the concerns raised by passenger Ava Thompson. We are actively investigating and take any allegations of discrimination seriously. We aim to provide a safe, welcoming environment for all customers. In Ava's corner of the airport, her phone pinged. She saw Tripway's official statement. It was painfully vague, offering no admission of wrongdoing. The replies below it were a mix of supportive retweets on her behalf and outraged calls for a boycott. Some demanded a deeper apology, others urged Ava to press charges. As the story caught national attention, Caldwell's team realized they had only one good card to play, a direct, personal apology from the CEO. But would that be enough to quell the outcry, especially for Ava, whose personal and professional life had already been derailed? Late that afternoon, Ava's phone rang again this time. It was James Walters, Thomas Caldwell's executive assistant. Miss Thompson, Mr. Caldwell, would like to meet you in person to discuss a resolution. We can send a car to pick you up from JFK if you're willing. Ava hesitated. Part of her wanted nothing more to do with Tripway. Her sense of betrayal was raw. Yet she recognized this could be an opportunity to confront the very top of the company, perhaps even to secure a broader commitment to change. All right, she said after a moment, I'll meet him. But I'm not signing any non-disclosure agreements or gag orders without a lawyer present. Understand? Walters sighed. Understood. We just want a conversation. Mr. Caldwell is eager to make this right. Within the hour, a black sedan arrived at the arrival's curb. Ava climbed in, noticing the nervous expression of the driver, who politely introduced himself and said little else. The drive into Manhattan passed in a blur of skyscrapers and traffic jams. Her phone continued buzzing, with notifications, journalists requesting interviews, acquaintances checking if she was okay, strangers offering support or condemnation. They arrived at Tripway's corporate offices, a sleek glass tower near Hudson Yards. Security waved her in, and soon Ava stood in a gleaming reception area on the 27th floor. James Walters greeted her with a respectful nod, leading her to a private conference room. There, behind a polished wooden table, stood Thomas Caldwell. He stepped forward, extending his hand. Miss Thompson, I'm Thomas Caldwell. Thank you for coming. Ava glanced at his outstretched hand, then shook it, her face neutral. I'm here to hear what you have to say. Seated, Caldwell wasted no time. I want to offer you a heartfelt apology on behalf of Tripway Airlines and personally. The manner in which you were removed from the flight was unacceptable. We've identified staff involved and are taking corrective action. Ava frowned. I lost a major job interview because of that. An apology doesn't give me that opportunity back. Caldwell nodded gravely. We understand. That's why we'd like to offer you compensation, full reimbursement of any expenses, a significant settlement for the distress and lost opportunity, and a public statement of regret from me personally. Ava folded her arms. What about changes to your protocols? This wasn't just about me. It's about anyone who can be profiled arbitrarily. Caldwell took a breath. You're right. We're revising our security training and oversight. Flight attendants will have clearer guidelines to prevent biased decisions. We'll also institute a second-layer review before a passenger is removed for suspicion. I promise you, Miss Thompson, we're serious. She studied him. His words sounded sincere, but was it genuine concern or just crisis management? Probably both. And what about the employees responsible? She pressed. Suspended pending investigation, Caldwell replied. We're also conducting internal training to ensure no one is singled out based on race, gender, or mere anxiety. Ava's anger flared again, but she recognized that punishing the flight attendant, while perhaps justified, wouldn't solve the larger issue. She tapped her fingers on the tabletop. Fine, I'll consider your offer, but I want a direct statement that acknowledges this as profiling, not just unfortunate circumstances. Caldwell looked pained. Our legal team worries about wording that implies liability, but I see your point. Let me speak with them. If we can phrase it correctly, I'm willing to address that. A charged silence fell. Outside the window, the Manhattan skyline glowed in the late afternoon sun. Inside the conference room, two individuals negotiated the line between corporate liability and personal justice. In that pivotal moment, Ava felt a strange sense of empowerment. She had forced one of the country's major airlines to face their negligence. Now the question remained, would their promises manifest into real change? As negotiations continued behind closed doors, the public conversation on social media reached a fever pitch. Hashtags like #FlyingWhileBlack and #TripwayScandal trended nationally. Civil rights activists weighed in, calling for greater accountability. Political commentators on news networks debated whether this was an isolated incident or indicative of systemic problems in the airline industry. Ava, still inside Tripway's corporate boardroom, was only partially aware of the raging storm online. She'd turned her phone off for the meeting, wanting to focus on the conversation with Caldwell. But once they adjourned for a short break, she powered it back on. Her notifications were overwhelming, thousands of mentions, direct messages from strangers, and even a message from an old friend asking if she was okay. Feeling a swirl of emotions, she opened a few. One was from a prominent civil rights organization. We stand with you. If you need legal support or wish to push for broader policy changes, let us know. Another was from the hiring manager's assistant for that dream job in Los Angeles. We saw the news. So sorry about your experience. The hiring manager wants to know if you can reschedule for next week. He was impressed by your background and wants to meet you. Ava's heart leapt. After everything, there was still hope for that opportunity. She typed a quick reply, thanking them profusely and affirming she'd rearrange her schedule. A small smile of relief crossed her face. At least something good might come out of this mess. Just then, Caldwell's assistant, James Walters, re-entered the room. Miss Thompson, Mr. Caldwell would like to continue the discussion with you. He's also invited our head of diversity and inclusion to join us. Ava followed Walters back to the conference room, where a poised woman introduced herself as Dr. Marcia Goodwin, the new head of diversity and inclusion at Tripway. Miss Thompson, I'm deeply sorry for your experience, Dr. Goodwin said earnestly. I joined this company to address exactly these kinds of issues, but it seems we have a ways to go. Over the next half hour, they hammered out a plan. Tripway agreed to 1. Issue a formal public apology naming Ava Thompson, acknowledging discriminatory bias in the incident. 2. Provide a financial settlement covering lost wages, emotional distress, and the missed opportunity, though. Ava's interview was now being rescheduled. 3. Implement mandatory anti-bias training for all Tripway employees, from ground staff to flight crew, with Dr. Goodwin overseeing the initiative. 4. Create a passenger review protocol that required a second opinion beyond a single flight attendant before a passenger could be deemed suspicious or removed. Ava listened, still cautious but beginning to feel some measure of satisfaction. Would it fix everything overnight? Probably not. But the airline was clearly feeling the heat and was prepared to make real changes. Caldwell summarized, will also cover any immediate travel arrangements you need, Miss Thompson, for your rescheduled interview in Los Angeles. First class, of course. We want to make sure you see our commitment to do better. The echo of public outrage had forced the airline's hand. Yet, as Ava gazed at Caldwell and Dr. Goodwin, she sensed genuine remorse and a willingness to evolve. The monstrous machine of corporate PR had been forced into a moral stance, one that might, if followed through, make the skies a little friendlier for everyone. Later that evening, Ava returned home, her phone still buzzing with messages from friends, colleagues and reporters. Though she felt mentally drained, there was an undercurrent of relief. The negotiations with Tripway had produced a tangible outcome, a personal apology from CEO Thomas Caldwell, a comprehensive plan for change, and enough compensation to cover her immediate financial loss. As she unlocked the door to her modest Brooklyn apartment, she noticed a text from her mother. "Saw you on the news, honey. So proud you stood up for yourself. Call me." Ava smiled, realizing that her story had spread far beyond Twitter. News channels had likely aired the clip of her being escorted off the plane, along with statements from Tripway. She set her carry-on aside and sank onto the couch, calling her mum. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Didn't mean to worry you, but it's been a crazy day." Her mother's voice brimmed with concern and pride. "Baby, I was so mad when I saw what they did to you, but you handled it with grace. I'm glad the airline is making amends." They spoke for a while, with Ava recounting the entire saga from being labeled suspicious to calling the CEO in a last-ditch move. Her mother's outraged commentary made Ava chuckle despite the day's heaviness. After the call, Ava opened her email to confirm details for her rescheduled interview in Los Angeles. Indeed, the firm's hiring manager had responded positively, scheduling her for the following week. The relief that washed over her was profound. The opportunity she thought lost was now revived, perhaps even strengthened by her newfound resilience. Tripway's promise statement emerged on social media the next morning. It read, "We deeply apologize to Miss Ava Thompson for the distress caused by her removal from Flight 2211. We acknowledge that our process failed her, leading to a discriminatory outcome. Tripway is committed to implementing new protocols, including mandatory anti-bias training, to ensure every passenger is treated with respect and dignity. We thank Miss Thompson for bringing this issue to our attention and pledge to evolve into a more inclusive airline." The response online was mixed. Some commended Tripway for taking responsibility, others accused the airline of doing the bare minimum. But for Ava, the statement was a first step. She retweeted it, adding a brief note of her own, grateful for the progress, still pushing for systemic change so no one else goes through what I did. In the days that followed, Ava prepared for her second chance at the LA interview. Tripway arranged a first-class seat on a competing airline to avoid any immediate tension with their own staff, and Dr. Goodwin personally called Ava to go over the timeline for implementing the new anti-bias training. It wasn't exactly the triumph Ava had once envisioned, a dream day culminating in a new job offer. Instead, it was a collision of heartbreak, humiliation, and a surprising surge of public support. And though she didn't know it yet, her life would never return to normal. She was now an unwitting advocate, a symbol of what could be achieved when one person stands up against injustice, armed with a smartphone and unwavering resolve. A week later, Ava boarded a flight at JFK again, this time with a competing airline, courtesy of Tripway's compensation plan. The gate agent greeted her warmly, scanning her ticket without the slightest hint of suspicion. Ava felt a momentary pang of anxiety, recalling how a simple gesture like this had turned catastrophic before. But the difference now was tangible. She was armed not just with a ticket, but with a hard-earned sense of empowerment. She settled into her first-class seat, a courtesy that still felt surreal. A flight attendant offered her a pre-departure beverage, and Ava smiled politely, trying to relax. The memories of that humiliating day flashed in her mind, but she reminded herself that much had changed since then. She had forced an entire airline to confront its biases, perhaps just a small dent in a massive industry, but still significant. As the plane took off for Los Angeles, Ava peered out the window, watching the lights of New York City fade into the distance. She allowed herself a moment of reflection. If someone had told her a week ago that she would become a minor viral figure, locked in a battle with a major airline CEO, she would have laughed. Yet life had a way of twisting fate in unexpected directions, forging new paths from the debris of shattered plans. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Marcia Goodwin. Just wanted to let you know the staff training pilot starts next month. I'd love your input on the curriculum. Let's chat soon. Ava smiled. She actually meant what she said about wanting me involved. A flicker of pride ignited in Ava's chest. Maybe her corporate PR background and personal experience could help shape a more inclusive environment. The flight landed in Los Angeles right on schedule. Ava stepped off the plane, feeling a rush of warm California air. Her rebooked interview was set for the following morning. This time, she had a night to rest, gather her thoughts, and approach the opportunity with a clear mind. Tripway had arranged for a hotel, an upscale property in downtown another olive branch from the airline. In her hotel room, overlooking the city's skyline, Ava reviewed her presentation slides for the job interview. She felt a calm confidence. If she could handle a public confrontation with an airline, she could certainly navigate the pressure of a formal interview. The adversity she'd faced had sharpened her resolve, revealing depths of strength she hadn't fully recognized in herself before. The next morning, she arrived at the firm's office building in a tailored suit, ready for her redo. The hiring manager greeted her warmly, acknowledging the ordeal she'd been through. "We admire your resilience," he said, guiding her to the boardroom where other executives waited. Ava delivered her presentation with poise, weaving in real-life examples of crisis management from her personal experience with Tripway, omitting sensitive details, but showcasing the communications strategy she'd deployed. The panel seemed impressed, asking thoughtful questions. By the end, she left with a handshake and the words, "We'll be in touch very soon." Stepping outside, the sun high in the pristine blue sky, Ava let out a long breath. Regardless of whether I get the job, I'm proud of how I handled myself. She reached for her phone, noticing a missed call from her mother, likely wanting an update. At that moment, she felt something shift inside, like a new dawn rising. She had stood her ground, demanded accountability, and found a renewed sense of purpose. Though her journey wasn't over, she felt a new readiness to face whatever came next, be it a career breakthrough, further activism, or simply living her life with the unshakable knowledge that, in the fight against injustice, one voice can truly move mountains. Thank you for joining Ava's tumultuous ride from a routine trip at JFK to a shocking ejection from her flight, all the way to the CEO's corner office. Her story reminds us that bias can lurk behind ordinary procedures, and that courage, combined with determination, can spark meaningful change even in a massive corporate structure. By refusing to stay silent and leveraging the power of social media, Ava not only secured justice for herself, but also paved the way for new policies that could protect countless other travelers. If this tale resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with friends who value stories of perseverance and truth, and subscribing to this channel for more inspiring narratives. Your engagement helps keep these real-life lessons alive, reminding everyone that sometimes the strongest weapon against prejudice is simply one voice refusing to back down. Thank you for watching.